Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Meaningful Communication Show. I'm your co-host, Chad Eves of Executive Communication Brief with Mike Gansel of Voice of Reason Consulting. And this morning we are joined by a guest. And Mike, introduce our viewers to our guest this morning.
Well, you know what happens when you get two Michaels or two Mikes, one has to choose. So I'm Mike today, and I'm happy to introduce Michael Brathwaite, who's Executive Director of BNI. Michael, it's great to have you on the show. And why don't you spend a few minutes and tell us all about you and BNI? And don't go on too long because we're going to have to ask you a bunch of questions.
Absolutely.
So really appreciate it. It's great to see you.
Well, no, it's great to see both of you too, and thank you for having me on. I'm really excited to be here. I guess a little by background, I've been in the financial services world for 40 years, and really the cross section between that and BNI was really plain and simple. It was about me trying to develop business and meeting more people, and certainly once I found BNI, which I'm sure we'll go into in detail, that's what really led me to being part of the organization and certainly getting more involved over the years.
And the reason we wanted to hear from you is that since you've been in networking for as long as you have been, we want to hear about some maybe secrets that you can share with our audience, maybe some tips, and tell us how. I guess why don't we start from the beginning? So when did you first hear about BNI, and then when it was formed and when you started here in New York?
Got it. Well, for me, BNI itself was formed in 1985. The first chapter in New York State was in 1989, and it was started in Scarsdale, New York. And how I heard about it, as I think many of our members have over the years, it was basically an insurance agent who we were working together, trying to develop business and really sharing some ideas. And he had mentioned to me, hey, there's this thing, BNI, that's coming to New York. It's not here before. Would you be interested in coming down and seeing it? I said, absolutely. It turned out I was at the first meeting, and I joined, and was part of that specific chapter up in Westchester for 19 years.
Wow. And so what made you think about starting? Now, actually, we should say that you and your partner, Todd, what's Todd's last name, Mike?
Hallinger.
Mike Hallinger. You and Mike Hallinger.
No, Todd Hallinger. Sorry,
Todd Hallinger basically met in one of those chapter meetings in Scarsdale?
No, the interesting thing for Todd and I became good friends. We actually met through corporate softball. And then in the aftermath at bars after playing softball, and we were at different firms though, so we were really competition. And then we became friends. And over the years, as I joined and had success, I then convinced Todd that he should get into a group himself because we were in the same business. He was in financial services also. I said, you should do this. It's working great for me. And after having to convince him for a little while, as all people, it was too early in the morning and he didn't think it would have value, but over time he saw it and then he got involved in the chapter himself. And then from there is kind of how as we started to see the value. It was all over the country. It was in Westchester, in Rockland. We had 25 chapters, 3 chapters in Mahopac, and none in Manhattan. And that's what really, Todd was the one. We were coming back from a Knicks game, and we were stuck in traffic at 11 o'clock at night. And he said, turn around. As we're sitting on the West Side Highway, he said, what do you see? I said, I see buildings. You know how many people in those buildings? You know how many chapters we could have in New York if we started a BNI down here? And that really was the acorn of what started us on the road to developing Manhattan.
And that was what year?
That was in 1996.
Okay, so 1996. And so, what was that like in the beginning? Did you have trouble finding people, or what was that experience like?
That's a great one. Interesting. We had great success in Westchester. Like we started over, let's say, a 2 or 3 year period, probably 20 chapters, and people really gravitated to it. It was very natural in the townships of, let's say, Westchester or Long Island, where it's community based. When we came to Manhattan, we figured all these people, it's going to be easy. It was the exact opposite. People were very resistant. They didn't believe in it. I mean, the kind of the philosophies that we had, first of all, 7 a.m. meetings. People were like, no way we can get to a meeting in New York City at 7 a.m. We got trains, planes, buses, it's not going to happen. So that's out. We're not doing 7 a.m. Then the philosophy of giver's gain, help your neighbor. New Yorkers don't help their neighbor, right? We're not going to do that. We're about getting what we need to get. And then the last piece was even the simplest things is wearing name tags, right? The joke was New Yorkers don't wear name tags because it doesn't match our outfits. So we had a lot of resistance going on that I did not anticipate. And New Yorkers always said to us, we are different. Even though we said it's working around the country, New Yorkers truly believe New Yorkers are different. And ironically, to some degree, we said the same thing in Westchester. Less adamantly, as they say in New York, but still to the same extent. So it took a little while.
And so you started with one chapter.
Correct.
And how many chapters do you have now?
51.
51. And about how many participants?
About a little under 1,200 members.
Wow.
So Michael, I have a question. So you mentioned some of the challenges that you had in starting up in Manhattan specifically, and with networking in a more broad sense. I think all of us who've been in business have been in some kind of networking, whether it was a chamber, a group like BNI, or something else. What really spoke to you as far as BNI? What was the spark that set it apart from some of these other activities?
The main things were every chapter is one person per profession or specialty. So when you go to a chamber meeting, right, you could have, 10 investment people, 10 insurance agents, a bunch of attorneys, and we're all chasing the same pieces of business. And it becomes really combative within a room, right? Because your competition is standing right next to you as you're pitching somebody. Where you come to a BNI meeting, it's one person especially. So you're in your own little universe. You own that seat. No competitions in the room. So you get the opportunity to tell your story. So I thought that was very compelling to me. The second aspect that was really the game changer was the fact that my greatest difficulty, I think for many of us, when we talk about some of the mistakes we make, follow up. Right? How do you get all these cards. You say I was the king of the business cards. You go to a network event, a chamber event, get a lot of cards, take those cards and pile them up on a desk. And over the years, you have a bunch of cards, but no business. When you come to a BNI meeting, I'm going to see you this week. We're going to talk about possibly doing business. Maybe there's an idea back and forth. I'm going to see you again next week. I'm going to see you again the week after. Right? So that challenge of how and when do we follow up? How do we go from meeting somebody to turning it into a meaningful relationship is actually done for you. I'm going to see you every week, potentially for the rest of my life. And so we will develop the relationship. We won't have to worry about the follow-up. Matter of fact, the accountability is the second part of that, right? So if you give me a referral, I know I have to call that person or that referral before I see you next week. Because what are you going to say to me? How'd it go? Right? And so I can't say, I didn't even call them. Right? So it really puts you in a position that you're bringing your best self forward, right? You're doing the things you're supposed to do. So those were the things that really attracted me to it, because those were some of my weaknesses, candidly.
So interesting. You talk about follow-up and accountability. What would you say is a key lesson or insight, 1, 2, 3, that you've gained from your BNI experience? So I guess follow-up and accountability, but maybe some other insights?
I would say, certainly those would be key elements. But I think the number one element that I've observed over the years, who has success at doing this, they had a great expectation of success. They came with a positive attitude. They're really supportive of others. They put themselves out, right, for others instinctively. Right. And they really are going beyond the call of duty, right, almost to an unreasonable level. But in doing that, the success comes back to them. And that is our core philosophy in BNI, givers gain. If I help you, you'll naturally want to help me, the law of reciprocity. Right. So that formula, and those who've had the greatest success come instinctively with it or are trained. And one of the jokes I say, we have so many members that are so good at it. I try to say, are they that nice or that smart? Right? Because it's hard to differentiate, right? If they've recognized the key to formula, or are they just doing what they do? So
is that part of the process that when people say, I want to join BNI, how do you vet them? And is that what you guys look for? How does that work?
Yeah, well, the vetting process is on two levels. First level, certainly your own quality, your ability to deliver the services that you provided. What's your level of experience? We do ask for references, right? And the references will be someone you've done business with that can speak highly of you, right? So we get to know that you're a quality person. Certainly we're looking at tenure, your background, your credentials. But then, yes, the next half of that is your personality trait a helpful person? Or are you someone that's looking to make a difference, or are you looking to get business just for yourself? Now, the realities are most people, when you come to a networking event, you are coming to get business for yourself, right? No one wakes up early in the morning to go out into the world just to help people, right? That's not usually the motivation. But what we teach and what you observe over the years, that as I help more people, it comes back to me. So we're just looking, are you coachable, and are you thinking that way, or are you more a lone ranger, let's say, right? Your instinct is, I'm doing it on my own, and this may not be a good fit for you. And we let people know that.
So over the years since you got involved, so how long were you a member versus when you started taking a leadership role, or the executive director role that you've got now? Like, what kind of time frame was that for you?
I was a member for 7 years before I became an executive director. So in 89 through 96, I started, let's say, going around and helping as an assistant for initially. They call it assistant director, probably from about 94, 95. So it was about 5 years in that role. And then as an executive director, it's been since 96 till certainly to today. And at that moment, I was a member at that moment in time from 1989 through 2008.
How has the membership evolved since you started, like to today? As far as, is it pretty much been the same profile of person, or has that changed over the years?
Certainly the profile's gotten younger. So I would say when I first started, the average age was, I'd say, between 45 and 50. There were people that were pretty seasoned in their profession, business owners, lead salespeople, people that, because networking was really, you always perceived it as those just starting out. But in the end, we attracted those who were more seasoned in their profession and looking to take it to the next level. I would say now, and this is just a generation of entrepreneurs, right? The young people are much more, with the gig economy, they're doing many more things. So we're getting members in as young as 19, 20, 21. And so I'd say that profile has changed, that young people are embracing entrepreneurship and going out on their own and wanting to change the story. So I'd say that's probably the biggest difference.
So, what makes it? Well, I'm going to ask you, what are 3 common networking mistakes to avoid?
I would say number 1, selling too fast in the process. When you meet someone and you're just getting to know them, the biggest mistake is I hand you my card and ask you, do you want to buy something? Right. So I'd say that's the number 1 mistake. And, and again, it's something, because we go out to events, that's our instinct, right? We're trying to do business, but it's not about, and I always say there's a process. Like I always say in baseball, right? You come up to bat, right? You have to, before you could score a run, you have to go to first base, second base, third base, home. There's no way to get up to the plate and go first base, come back home, right? You have to go through the steps. So I think that sales process, understanding that you're just getting to meet them, you're not trying to sell them anything. So that's number 1. Number 2 would be, again, back to follow-up. Right. That's on the classic mistake. So you get all these relationships, you start to develop something. Maybe you go out to lunch or do a Zoom call or make some kind of connection, but then you get disappointed too quickly in the process because nothing happens. Right. And so you give up. Right. You started and then you give up and you go on to the next. And I think the other, which is almost part of that second one, is you believe if CPA is a good contact for you, I need to find 10, 15, 20. I'm trying to find as many CPAs as I can meet so I can do business with all these CPAs. Where at the end of the day, it's better to have 1 or 2. And I always say, don't think wide, think deep, right? So find a relationship, see if something comes. And the best analogy I use there is if you're drilling for oil, you don't start drilling down. Find oil. Say, okay, we got some. All right, let's find the next hole, right? You keep going deeper and deeper and deeper and see how much oil you can find in that one hole. So I think people think that they need to have so many relationships, but what ends up happening, you kind of spread yourself too thin, right? Because you can't give everybody referrals.
It's true. So Chad, I've been asking Michael all these questions. What's your networking experience been like?
For me?
Yeah.
I think it's, definitely some of the common things that Michael just shared is, we've all been a victim of that drive-by. Here's my business card, buy my widget, buy my widget, buy my widget. And then you probably never see that person again. And for me, it's getting to know the people. It's not going in there to make the sale, because you don't know when someone, a lot of times you don't know what their need is when you first meet them to begin with, and you got that trust factor. And I think that's where something like BNI, probably really shines, in that you get that familiarity, you get to meet people, versus someone parachutes out of the sky. And it's like, oh, here I am, you don't know me. It's like getting LinkedIn messages, like, I don't know how many LinkedIn messages I get a day, oh, do you need this? Do you need that? I'm like, I don't know who you are, and, I think that's really where the networking and quality networking groups can shine again, especially. And this is a question that, I have for Michael, is we're still kind of emerging from the pandemic. And in the work that I do in communications skills and coaching people, it's kind of scary how much people's communication skills have degraded in such a short period of time, as far as, presentations, interacting with people in a work team, stuff like that. What's been that impact on your groups, Michael? And what do you see? How do you see your groups behaving or changing as a result from that?
Yeah, fair question. I think the greatest challenge we have, and this is really a New York challenge, and I would say we saw it on the coast. New York and San Francisco have had, because of the fact that we haven't had the big traffic coming back to New York, we've been forced to go almost 100% virtual, right? And so that creates a new paradigm of how you interact and how your communication skills have to really change what you can get away with in front of a room. Just your presence in a room, and even just the social things that you might do that don't work on screen that work in person, right? So that's part of it. The other part is the discipline that is required when you're online is much different, right? Because you can easily distract yourself, right? As I say, right? Technically no one else is distracting you, but if you're looking at emails, looking at your phone, worried about the next meeting that you're going to, you're not 100% attentive. Where in a room, other people are watching you. So if you're on your phone, everybody's seeing you do it. So you tend to try not to be rude, and you'll avoid that type of contact. So I'd say that's the biggest change, is that being online, it's forced us to be better, but we have that mix. We have some groups that are doing great because they're embracing it, they're accepting it, they're understanding it creates great scalability, it creates great efficiency, it creates the ability to go around the country or around the world and potentially do business with people. But it means you have to work harder at it, right? And that's the challenge.
Yeah. So actually, you've talked about what the biggest difference is, and I think that's pretty clear. Mastering the screen is obviously very different from sitting next to a person and maybe making a side comment, or and obviously you can't really look at your phone, or be terribly distracted, or walk out of the meeting. So it's very different. So, and I guess my question is, what do you see as the current trends that are happening? Because everybody is seeming to move back to offices, even New York and San Francisco. What do you think is the greatest trends that are going to be happening for the next year or two as we continue to come out of the pandemic?
Yeah, I think as we're seeing in corporate America as a whole, and we're going to see it in the world network, it's the hybrid models, right? Where we're going to be having in-person meetings, and we're starting to see some of those, if it's once a month or twice a month, because our meetings are weekly. And then you're going to have those virtual meetings. So it's going to be a blended type of a relationship where you're doing a little bit of both, right? And that takes the pressure off of having to, let's say, get on the road early, and I talk, many of my members, we talk about getting up at 5 a.m. to get to a meeting at 7 in the middle of the winter. There's no time you're ever excited about that, right? Even myself doing it. Yes, Mike.
Have you ever considered changing the time to 7:30 or to 8 a.m.?
We have, and actually on virtual, we have gone to 7:30. So we have moved the times back. Some are going a little later. Part of the time, and it's interesting, is also the challenge in the level of commitment, right? You're pre-screening seriousness when you say 7 a.m., right? That weeds out anybody that doesn't want to really play at a high level. So that's part of it. The other part of it, which is just fact, most of our workdays start at 9 o'clock, let's say. So if you're doing this during your work day, it can't be additive. It may even take away from business you're doing. If you're doing it on an off hour that you weren't working anyway, it only can add to your bottom line. And that's part of the reason we pick, for the most part, off hours. And the reason we do some evenings or groups, but in general, evenings are more challenging because more things get in the way. You know, you have family obligations that come up. You have a client that comes in from out of town that wants to see you, and what are you going to do? You know, they're in town for a day. You have to miss that meeting, right? You can't miss that opportunity to see a client. 7 a.m. to 8:30 or 7:30 to 8:45 virtually. What were you doing anyway? You know, that's the key.
So, what does 2024 or what does the future look like for BNI? You said blended. Now, let me ask you this about blended.
Mm-hmm.
When you say blended, you mean once or twice a month in person and the other meetings virtual. You don't mean a meeting where some people are there in a room together and some people are on the screen. Which do you mean?
We're seeing both. We're seeing both versions of that. And
you know, I would tell you, I don't think the blended room works very well. I've been in those meetings. And the problem is, unless there is technology that can change that, but that technology is expensive. I think
correct.
I think it's like $700 some odd for the unit that allows you to, when you have a Zoom meeting, to be able to see people in their own box instead of seeing people in a group box. And then, of course, you have people in the meeting. So I'm not sure that blended, unless the technology gets so cheap, so inexpensive that everybody can basically have it on their own.
Right.
So
it's a mixed blessing, and I've seen some done well. Right, and you're right. It's going to be critical with the technology and the sound, and it takes a greater effort on the leadership, right? Because you really have to be good at emceeing and good at making everybody feel included in the meeting. And I have seen some that you do feel a little disruptive. It's like it's almost two different meetings going on, right? There's the in-person meeting and there's the Zoom meeting. They just so happen to be sharing the time. So I agree that there is challenge with it, but I actually believe the technology. I mean, what's interesting, I say what happened with the pandemic, all it did was speed up what was going to occur anyway, right? Yeah. It's not like this was coming. The technology was coming. We had saw that, and we knew there were going to be other ways of us communicating, other ways of us interacting with business professionals. It just got hit so quickly that our bodies weren't ready for it. It didn't evolve towards it. It was like literally for us, it was overnight. It was one of the great miracles that our corporate leadership really took. We were in person 1 week, and we were 100% virtual the next week.
Mm-hmm. So 2024, I'm sorry, go ahead, Chad.
Oh, I'm sorry. So I have somewhat of a tactical question for both of you. You know, with the pandemic, obviously everything went 100% digital. Post-pandemic now, and coming out of it and seeing people in person, what do you see as the role for business cards, brochures? Are people wanting that tactile touch again, or has that ship sailed and everybody's digital now?
It's done. Everybody's digital. You're doing electronic.
No, I don't agree. I don't agree with that.
You don't agree?
No.
Well, it depends. It's generational too, Michael. So
even generational. I'll tell you. I've been in some groups recently, Michael. Okay. So one.
This was not planned, by the way. Go to your corners. Ding, ding.
Well, Michael knows that when we get together, we've got to do this.
Yeah.
So anyway, two things. One is that there's a fellow that does digital cards, completely digital card with video embedded in the card. And, so if obviously you can send that via the internet, but when you are in person with that, it doesn't really work all that well. It really doesn't. And I've been in several networking meetings, events, cocktail parties and stuff like that recently. And that's where you have that opportunity to give them your physical business card. And I've had people say, well, I have a digital card and I have that digital card just doesn't work. It's not the same. It's not the same. And I'm talking to people who are significantly younger than I am, who are much more technologically astute. So I have to say that I don't think the physical business card is ever going to go away. Yes, it's, here, phone to phone, I got that. But No, I don't think it's going away so quick.
Okay, well, it'll have a place, but I think the digital has a lot of efficiencies. One, have you ever lost a card you didn't want to lose?
Sure, but
Right,
but I've lost my phone. Everything's in the cloud. No, you're absolutely correct. There's no question. And also, yes, with a card, I got to go in and I got to type people's names, spell it wrong, and so on and so forth. No, you're absolutely correct. It does, but I just you know what the difference is? Maybe the card is an actual piece of physical real estate.
Agreed.
Physical real estate that you can actually hand someone, and it is more personal. But obviously, you have to be in person with that person to hand them the card.
Correct. So, correct. No, you're 100% right. The physicalness of it, the hand-to-hand combat, there's no replacing that. Like when we talk about the virtual world, I always say to people, do I believe in-person meetings are more effective in the short run? Absolutely. But what I've seen is your timeline of creating the relationships is longer virtually, but you can get to the same point, but it's a slower slope towards that end result.
I was going to ask you a question as to what makes a great networker. And I'm going to answer that instead of asking you.
Okay.
So I think that what makes a great networker are 3 words: repetition, repetition, repetition. And those 3 words encompass accountability, right? Follow up, giver's gain, all of that. So repetition, repetition, repetition. It's not a one and done.
Right.
We network, one and done. We met somebody. 2 years later, we run into them, or 2 years later, we see them in another meeting. That was really okay, but somewhat meaningless. It's the repetition that makes somebody a great networker.
And that you're talking about the core philosophy of BNI is that regular meetings. And one of the other aspects I think is critical is the concept of singular. When you go out and networking, you're networking for yourself. When you're part of something bigger than you, which is what a group becomes, it's building a network. You're building a group, and now that group becomes the most important part of it, not you. And then, in any championship team or any successful Broadway play or any musical composition, it's not about the individual performances. It's about how we all come together to create something. And the whole concept is, right, the sum of the parts, right? Each of us individually, we're much better as a team than each of us can be individually. And that's really the concept of what we try to do in BNI.
I think that you well said. So, we spent a good portion of time asking about BNI. Now I think we may go over our time frame and hope people will continue to listen, because now I think we want to get to, what about you, Mr. Brathwaite? We have a question. So who or what has been your biggest inspirational role model, growing up or as an adult, or both?
Both. Well, certainly as a child growing up was my grandfather. And him and my mother raised me. And what he did, which I didn't only till years later realize. First of all, he used to walk the streets of New York. He was from Barbados. He used to say good morning to everybody on the streets in New York, and people used to look like he was crazy. But he had that energy, that attitude, that pleasantness, which is very much, if you travel to the islands, that's very natural down there, not so natural in New York, but he did it every day. And the other part, he came to the country in 1923. He worked 45 years in a row, never missed a day of work. And that work ethic and that showing up and being positive really rubbed off of me. And I was subconsciously going for a streak. I made it 25 years in a row before I had a day of work sick. So I didn't break his record. So I would say that was as a young person, certainly. As an adult, certainly Dr. Meisner, who's the founder of BNI, was a great inspiration to me, because he really, just meeting him and listening to him, and then had the opportunity to be around him a lot, I really showed me the power of what's in the dynamics of what was created just so simply. And I was thinking about this, and it's funny. The third person I'd say to impact me was Barack Obama, and not anything to do with his politics, but just the fact that we were born 2 years separately. I'm 2 years older than him. As a young boy growing up in this country, I never believed I could be president. I thought I could do a lot of things, and I thought I could accomplish a lot. Barack Obama believed he could be president. And what it taught me was it's what you believe is what's possible. If you can't believe it, it can't happen, right? Now, I even if I believed I could be president, I probably wouldn't have been because I didn't have the talent. But the important thing is you don't want to limit yourself. So it's your beliefs, it's your what's possible is way beyond what anybody else can believe for you. So those, I'd say, would be the three.
And I think that really speaks to the advantages when it comes to groups too, because there's times when it helps that you have the belief of somebody else, when they're there to support you in what you're trying to do. Maybe, you're having some doubt, you hit a wall, whatever it might be, is to have that, that group, that community that, you can kind of lean on, or, they're there to at least, interact with you. So you're not by yourself, even if they're not overtly coming out. Oh no, you can do it. You're not alone.
Absolutely.
So we probably are extended, but we're going to ask another question or two, if you don't mind. Is that all right, Michael?
I'm thrilled to be here.
Okay? Chad, is that okay?
Oh yeah, let's do a couple more.
Okay. So how do you stay motivated and inspired in your work? Let's just say this. I'm going to actually ask you that. How do you stay inspired and motivated when it comes to BNI? It's been a hard road. I mean, you started in 1996. You've built 51 chapters. Pandemic hit. You've waded your way through, and now we're beyond that. And now we've got blended and so on and so forth. So now, what continues to motivate and inspire you? Do you want to continue to grow BNI?
Oh, absolutely.
Where you at?
Absolutely. No, we want to continue to grow. It's people. It's the impact on people, right? So over the years, for me, seeing the success by exposing people to this and the outcomes that people have created for themselves, the dreams that they've lived and the relationships they've built, right? And the family. I mean, there's people that, we've gone through so much together as a community. Right. And it really, I think the best way to look at this is you start out as basically strangers coming to a room together, whether it's online or in a physical room, and you don't know each other. Then you become acquaintances. Then you become colleagues a little bit. You do a little business together. And then you become friends. Right. And you start to get to know each other. And then by the end of it, you're actually family. And you actually care more about them. And I've seen that through the years, the things that members have done for other members, right, went way beyond the call of duty.
So I have an idea for you.
Okay.
Sons and daughters. Why not have your BNI members bring their sons and daughters to meetings?
Oh, it happens. We've done it. Actually, I'll give you one quick story. We had a young lady who was probably coming to chapters. Her name's Lily, since she was probably 5 or 6. And she was lovely. She'd sit there quietly and, was very polite. And by the time she was 8 or 9 or 10, in that range, she literally one day stood up. I was the presenter that day. She stood up and gave me a testimonial for my presentation, right? Probably when she was 10. So then it fast forward, she was with her father, and they're in an elevator, and 2 women are speaking about a problem they're having with something, and she's pulling on her father's coat. She ended up passing a referral. She ended up telling him they're complaining about so-and-so.
What I meant, and I think that's wonderful, but what I meant was, let's say that you have a 21-year-old or 25-year-old son or daughter, and actually BNI, the chapter has let's say a meeting where people have their adult children actually come to the meeting.
Yeah, no, and
actually help grow, because you are looking for younger people. So it's like all of a sudden a 19 or a 20-year-old is in the meeting and sees what the BNI model is like.
Certainly, and it that happens also. I just met a gentleman the other day who he got an internship by going to a BNI meeting he's in college. Right. And he was so thrilled to meet me and say, wow, BNI is great. And so, and my kids have all been exposed to BNI at young ages. And what they say now, their presentation skills, their ability to be in a room with other professionals, they're so comfortable so you're 100% right. And I think but to make a campaign of it and really get our members to focus on it, because it happens on one-offs, so you're 100% right. So I'm going to put that out there.
That's
so
great.
For those that are interested in looking at BNI in Manhattan, what's a good way for them to do that, to contact you, to contact the organization? Like, what would be their first step?
Yeah, first step, they can go to ManhattanBNI.com. That's our local website, and there they'll be able to get some more information. My contact information is right there on that page. My email, which I guess I can give out quickly, is real simple: MikeBNI25 at gmail.com. Right, that's a simple. But the website, ManhattanBNI.com, and they'll have a lot of information. We have a bunch of chapters. They're welcome to come down and just see it. Like I said, most of them are virtual, but go online. They'll be able to see it and see if it's a fit for them.
And if someone's outside of Manhattan?
Outside of Manhattan, what's interesting, we're even now, because of virtual, we have realtors from Florida joining our chapter because New York, Miami, right? They're calling it the sixth borough, right? And so there, a lot of members are out, but the national website is BNI.com. So if you're outside of New York and you want to look in your local area, the BNI.com website will take you anywhere in the world that you want to go.
Okay. Well, Mike, any
That's
closing
good.
comments as we wrap up?
Well, yeah, I'm sorry that we have to wrap up. I mean, I was going to ask Michael what his hidden talent was, but it's obvious what his hidden talent is. This guy is an incredible extrovert. He's got joy that emanates out of him, and I can understand how people are, enthralled with him. He's really a great guy, and I've learned a lot. I mean, I think what you believe is indeed possible, and that really starts. And I believe in the team, and I think in believing in building, and I think it's important that we all feel that we can make an impact on people that we meet with. So this has been terrific. As I said, we could go on and on. I think we've hit about 37 minutes so far, and but it's been wonderful. I really appreciate it. Chad, once again, been terrific. We'll come up with some more interesting guests and talk more about these topics. But Michael, really want to thank you. It's really been an absolute pleasure, and I learned a great deal.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
thank you for
definitely.
having both Chad and Michael. I really appreciate being here and having the opportunity to talk with you guys. A lot of fun. Hey, we got to do it again. And I look forward to meeting Chad. I look forward to meeting you in person. And Michael, we're local, so we'll see each other for sure.
Well, Chad,
I could be there later this year. Still finalizing plans, but
Okay.
I'll let you know.
Good.
You've definitely raised the bar on guests. It keeps going up with the show. And Mike, thank you as always for doing this with me. And Michael, have a good day. Thank you again for joining us.
Thanks, everybody. Look forward to seeing you again soon. And we have a YouTube channel. So, Chad, why don't you tell everybody about how to get us on YouTube?
I can show them if you ask again from your iPhone.
Well,
Siri started talking. It's on YouTube.
Here's the station just
Still talking. Jeez. It's taking over the world. The Meaningful Communication Show on YouTube. You can also go at the Meaningful Communication Show and find it on YouTube. There will also be links on our LinkedIn pages and various other social media that you can find us there as well.
look forward to that. Hey, bye-bye, everybody. Thanks again.
Take care.